The pool of generals used for the selection of this top generals list are not limited to free-to-play. Some generals will be extremely difficult to obtain. If you are lucky enough to obtain one of the more difficult generals without spending, rejoice, for the gods of Evony have surely blessed you. As a side note, the game has been changing very rapidly over the last few months. Therefore, there are some new considerations for rankings that did not previously exist. The new general ascension system has complicated what used to be somewhat straightforward. Since you need multiple copies of a general to ascend to the max level, finding the right general for you might not be as simple as picking the one that appears best on paper. Some generals are much easier to obtain and therefore can be ascended more easily. Ascending will provide more benefit than the differences between skill books, so if you are a free-to-play or medium to low budget player, you may not want to go with a general that is the most exclusive, as you will not likely be able to ascend them in the future. The ground PvP march is typically used as a cleanup march. Ground are weak against cavalry, but once that cavalry has been wiped out with a nice archer hit, the ground are significantly more effective. Ground troops have high scaling defense and HP, but attack isn't their strength. Yet, because they can withstand a lot of damage, they end up killing a lot of troops when used right. It's great to increase ground attack, but the priority should be increasing HP and defense over attack. Some people choose to use a ground speed skill book. It may or may not be effective. One of the frustrations of this game is that there is no transparency in the mechanics, so everything we do is basically educated guesswork. Personally, I prefer to prioritize ground HP, defense, and attack over ground speed because I know for certainty that the three actually do something to influence the battle. Whereas, there's a lot of uncertainty around ground speed. I prefer to play it safe and certain, but it is likely worth it to add the ground speed book. On ground cleanup rallies, you may end up with more kills and points over other players, and it could potentially increase the effectiveness of your march. Still, it could also potentially send your ground troops into a more exposed position by having them run slightly ahead of other troops, which is what happens to cavalry. Personally, I choose to go with what is certain to work, but choosing to go with ground speed may or may not be a better choice over one of the other skill books. And now for the top 5 PvP ground generals from all sources as of June 2022. Number 5. Trajan comes in at number 5, which is a sore point for many players. Being one of the only options for a free-to-play or lower-budget player, it's an absolute shame that he is not yet able to be ascended. Still, he's a good and reliable choice for most players due to his versatility and overall strength. Hopefully he will be in the next draft of generals to be ascended. Trajan's skill, Praetorian Guard, increases ground attack and defense by 15% and ground HP by 20%. Unlike most other ground generals, his primary skill works both offensively and defensively, meaning you could potentially use Trajan as a reinforcing general or even on the wall in a pinch. The best part about this general is that he is easily obtainable in the tavern, which makes him a good candidate for a top ground spot when he can be ascended. Still, there's no guarantee on when or if he will be ascended, so he can be placed no higher than 5th place right now. Number 4. Guan Yu is the first general on this list to be fully awakened and able to be ascended. He's a very strong general and a respectable choice for ground PvP march. His primary skill, Saint of War, increases ground attack by 30% and ground HP by 20%. Unfortunately, Guan Yu's specialties don't scale quite as well as other top generals, so he only makes it to 4th place. Guan Yu is not an easily obtainable general, so if you are looking to max out a top general, you should probably look to one of the others in the top 3 of this list instead. The only type of player that might want to look at using Guan Yu as their ground general is possibly a lower budget player that obtained him using a token and does not have access to other paid generals. Since Trajan can't be ascended yet, he's certainly a better choice, but that can change very quickly. Therefore, I would not recommend investing too much into Guan Yu. Number 3. Alexander the Great comes in at 3rd place in the list of top ground PvP generals. His placement is mostly associated to his value as a rally-leading general over his raw power. Individually, Alexander the Great would not make the top 5 list based on buffs or stats. He's relatively weaker than many of the other generals out there, including free-to-play options. To top off the negatives, Alexander the Great is not currently able to be ascended. Despite all these issues, he still places third simply due to the benefits he brings to Alliance rallies. Alexander the Great's skill, Conquest, increases ground attack by 20% and rally capacity by 15%. Being able to send an additional 15% troops to a rally is an enormous benefit, which more than makes up for all the negatives discussed earlier. However, he's really only a general to be used by the rally leader. If you're not the one running the rallies, you should look elsewhere for a ground general. Number 2. Scipio is an extremely strong pick for a ground PvP general, and he is already awakened for Ascension. His skill, Conqueror, increases ground troop attack by 30% and ground HP by 40% when used offensively. Unfortunately, this skill is not active when Scipio is used in a defensive situation. If you've been building up Scipio, you've made a great choice as, without a shadow of a doubt, Scipio is one of the absolute strongest ground generals in the game. When Scipio is fully maxed, his buffs are valued slightly higher than the general occupying the number 1 spot. However, this difference isn't significant enough to ignore the lack of versatility provided by his primary skill. Still, it should also be noted that his 4th specialty also provides an increase to death turning wounded, which might be of value to frequent participants of server vs server or world PvP. Number 1. The number 1 pick for the ground PvP march is Elise. Elise's skill, Dragon Song, increases ground troop HP by 30% when used offensively, and 30% ground troop attack when she is equipped with a dragon. The important aspect of this skill to make note of is that the 2 parts of the skill function independently. If you are attacking with a dragon, both the 30% HP and attack will come into play. When used to reinforce, the 30% attack will still function as the requirement is only that she brings a dragon. This provides her a slight versatility advantage over Scipio, but not quite at the level of other versatile generals like Trajan and Epaminondas. When Elise is fully maxed out in comparison to Scipio, you are essentially trading out defense buffs for attack buffs. In reality, aside from the minor boost in versatility, these 2 generals are quite similar in strength. Keep in mind that neither general is easily obtainable, so this top 5 list is very volatile at the moment. While they will always be strong generals, free-to-play or medium to low budget players should keep in mind that these generals may eventually be replaced by a more accessible general such as Trajan. Thank you so much for watching this video and supporting the channel. If you liked what you saw, please consider hitting the like button and checking out other videos on the Miser's Guide to Evony. I'll see you in the next video.